when you first heard that Logan August and Derek Penny were being sentenced to probation and community service, what was your reaction when you heard that sentencing?
I was shocked. I believe that the sentence should have been much more than community service. It's a lot more than just stealing marijuana from law enforcement. It's much deeper than that. It's an ethical issue. It's an issue where we have people who are empowered with guns, empowered with badges, and have the power to take your freedom away and have the power to take your children away, and they violated that trust. And when you violate that trust in the community that you serve, there should be an enhancement where your penalty's more severe than anybody else, not less severe. So I was shocked and really appalled, and have no idea what the judge was thinking.
You feel like you're shocked. What do you think the climate is for other deputies who are part of your organization?
Yeah, 99% of the deputies in this department are upset as well, because not only did they violate a trust, they put other deputies that work undercover in jeopardy. Anytime you're dealing in an undercover capacity and you have part of those people dealing with criminals dealing with criminals, quite frankly, you're placing your fellow deputies in jeopardy. They get it, they know it. Certainly there's a very small minority of people that probably feel differently, but the majority of this organization believes that those deputies, those ex-deputies, those criminals should have received a much more severe sentence.
So shock, a little bit of confusion. In an earlier interview, you were saying you were disgusted. Is that?
Yeah, I am disgusted because, we're at a time in our country, across our nation, we're trying to rebuild trust with our community that we serve. And it's very difficult when something like this happens. And then on top of that, when a judge comes right behind and sentences them to a slap on the wrist, that's offensive to us. These are not deputies; these are criminals, and that's where I think that's where we come from, is putting criminals in jail. And when they cross that line, they no longer were deputies; they're a criminal element, and we treat them as such. It's a federal judge, and I certainly don't want to get out of that arena and say what I think should have happened. What I do know is that doing jail time would have been appropriate. Any citizen in this county that came down and stole something out of the property room, dope out of our property room, would have gone to jail and would have done jail time. So why shouldn't these crooks?
Former deputies, what is the standard that you believe law enforcement should be held to, is held to?
I'm not sure. Do you think why I think it should be higher?
Yeah.
Because we're entrusted with power. To be a police officer, you have this enormous amount of power to take people's children, to take your freedom away. And we carry guns and badges and things that exhibit power. And when you abuse that power, it sends really a wrong message to the community that we're here to serve. And without them, we don't exist.
What's the message, when this is all said and done, that you want to send to the community?
Well, I want the community to understand that we hire from the human race. The reason it looks like law enforcement has more people that are arrested is because it's newsworthy. If someone, we arrest people, hundreds, every single day, that have a job somewhere. But that's not newsworthy where they work. And I get that, and I appreciate that. So it does look like we are more than anybody else, but that's simply not true. We live in a time where people aren't held accountable for their actions. And I think that's a terrible message to send to our youth.
Is there I guess, not a hope that they serve prison time to send a message, but when you're dealing with deputies like that who are facing these federal charges, is there essentially a hope that they do get held accountable, spend that prison time, because then that shows that you as law enforcement won't stand for that?
Well, we have to be careful, because in law enforcement, it's not our job to punish. We simply are not in the punish business. We're in the business of investigating crimes and making arrests and then submitting them to the district attorney or to the attorney general or whoever the investigating agency is. And it's their job to prosecute, and the judge's job to sentence. So I'm not trying to do the judge's job, but I know that my history just screams that this should have been much more than what it was.
Have you reached out to the judge since Monday?
No, I haven't. I have no business talking to a judge, telling a judge anything. They're elected as well. Federal judges are appointed, so they can do pretty much what they want. There's a lot of times I don't like what judges do, but I'm not qualified to do their job, nor I want to do their job.
Have you been in contact at all with August or Penny since Monday?
I have not.
What's your opinion, and this is echoing a little bit, but on the investigation that was done by the federal government?
Well, we're still doing an administrative investigation because we have to. I don't think that the feds did a complete investigation. They know I feel that way. We've gone back now and we're doing an administrative investigation, and we want to make sure that we clean that house. We want to make sure that we don't have anybody else there that is tainted. We have changed the amount of time that someone can spend in that unit. Which makes it detrimental to a good officer because it takes a long time undercover to learn your job and become really proficient at it. But we're going to limit that time because it's more important that we have an ethical standard as opposed to more important that we arrest people. So we're looking at everything that we can to try and ensure that this doesn't happen again because it just kills us. There's 1,300 employees here that are just disgusted when somebody does this to our profession.
And you're talking about the narcotics unit
Yes.
making changes.
Yes.
What can we expect to see differently?
Well, you won't see anything differently because we don't share all that information. A lot of it is we can't. But we are changing the amount of time that someone can spend there. We've had officers, when I was a young deputy, I worked undercover for 4 years. I think anything more than 4 years is a detriment to the career of anybody. So we're going to limit the amount of time that somebody can spend in there. We are going to do, just like we do with our vehicles, random audits. We had things that happened that should not have happened. We're going to look at our supervision and the way that we do things because it's unacceptable. We know it, and we have to trust our employees. And there's a fine line there between trusting and micromanaging, and it's a difficult path to walk. But we're working very diligently at doing that because we really need our community to support us. I can't speculate that whether somebody's character, but what I can tell you is that the deputies in this department probably have gone through much more than anybody in this room when it comes to before getting hired. They go through a polygraph exam where questions are asked about what they've done in their lives. They go through a 500 question psychological exam that a psychologist does, and a psychologist either gives a green light or a red light for hiring. They go through an extensive background before they ever get hired. If we get 1,200 applicants, maybe 50 will meet that standard. So we're doing everything that we can to get the best quality employee that we can get, but it's not a perfect system.
And since May 30th, I believe, Lieutenant Bill Starr, he was on paid administrative leave for his potential involvement with August and Penny. Is he still on paid administrative leave?
I've never said that he's on paid administrative leave. I can't talk about administrative investigations. The California law does not allow me to do that.
Okay. So can we say if there's an investigation still going on or no?
I can't talk about administrative investigations. You obviously have information and that you've gotten somewhere. I can't give that to you. I can't talk about that. The law doesn't allow me to. Of course, that's a peace officer bill of rights, and sometimes that hampers me as a sheriff because I want to talk about those things. I want the community to know that we're doing the best that we can to clean out anything that taints our organization.
At the end of the day, what do you want to make sure the department is walking away with? Like, how do you want to move forward and come out of this experience? Well,
there's a mixed message. I want the 1,300 employees that work here to know that I'm proud of the job that they do. I want those employees to know that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bad apples do not taint you. What I can't share with the public and the media is how many officers come forward in this particular investigation voluntarily to say, I know this, and this, I know that. I think I can help this investigation because they want those bad apples out of this organization more than anybody. I saw a letter to the editor this morning saying the sheriff and the chief of police should weed out their bad employees, and that really sounds good. But do you weed out employees before they do something wrong? How do you know a good employee is going to do something bad until it happens? And so we're reactive more than we are proactive, But again, that extensive process that we go through before we ever hire someone, give them the opportunity to come to work here, is extensive. And it's just not a perfect system.
And you were talking about how, I mean, your goal is to build trust with the community after it's broken a bit it's hindered with something like this. What's your game plan? What do you hope community members know in order to move forward and build that?
Well, I hope they understand. I know they do. There are people out there that work in companies that have people that get arrested. They know that we hire from the same pool that they do, and they know that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. They know there's a system to make complaints. They know that we investigate those diligently. And I think we have the trust of our community. But it's very difficult to maintain that. You're always reacting to this stuff, and you're reacting to the community and to the news media for things that happen. I mean, there's no other way to do that because you have to address that. But it's a very, very small percentage of people in our organization and yours and anybody else's that do corrupt things, but they're there. And it's our job to eliminate them.
One thing that the judge said that stood out to me, and obviously you talk about the extensive background checks that you go through, but he was former law enforcement, this judge said there's temptations just everywhere in this job. Can you speak to that, just maybe so the public can understand kind of what you're facing on a day-to-day basis and why maybe that 1% gives kind of a bad name to the 99%?
Well, I can't speak for where this judge is coming from because for the life of me, I don't know where he would be coming from. I saw one letter to the editor or letter to the judge that said when people make mistakes, they deserve a second chance. I get that. You run through a red light, you think it's a green light, that's a mistake. When you conspire with another police officer to steal drugs and to sell them on the streets and to impact our youth with those drugs that you're selling on the streets, shame on you. And that's not a mistake. That's a criminal conspiracy, and they should have been held accountable.
Something the judge also said is sending August to prison would be making the public pay for him again. That kind of stood out to me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we should not have any jails or prisons at all under that theory. That's ridiculous, and again, I don't know where this judge is coming from.
And if we can shift gears now, other thing coming out today was the district attorney with Lawrence Thatcher deciding not to press charges. Thoughts on hearing that?
Well, I can tell you that there's a criminal investigation on these, and there's an administrative investigation. Evidently, the criminal investigation is over with. The district attorney has decided not to criminally prosecute Larry Thatcher. That's her job, not mine. We still have to finish an administrative investigation because in a criminal investigation, you could go to jail. In an administrative investigation, you could receive punishment from a written reprimand to termination. And that's the difference. I'm just not allowed to talk about the administrative investigation.
Are you able to at least confirm that it's still going on at this point?
Well, there are always, in these type of cases, there's always two investigations, and we have not finished our investigation. I wish that a judge that does, and in the first case with the BPD, we saw basically the same thing. We saw statements from a federal judge that just made no sense to us in law enforcement. When we arrest a bad guy, a crook, we don't write letters of support on they're good people. We don't do that. And we take them and they prosecute them. The judge doesn't talk about how great their family is. I don't get this. The judge treated them as deputy sheriffs and as police officers. And I'm sorry, when they cross that line, they're not police officers anymore. They're not deputy sheriffs anymore. They're crooks, and they should be treated that way.